Good Tuesday morning, and thank you for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Jason Hackett. Let's get to your headlines. Overnight, a 7th fallen U.S. service member was honored with a dignified transfer ceremony back on U.S. soil. As President Trump offers mixed signals about how much longer the war with Iran will last and leaves the door open to acquiring Iranian oil to help tamp down rising energy prices. NBC's Alice Barr has the very latest from Washington.
Hi there. President Trump is now calling the war with Iran a short-term excursion. Asked how that squares with his defense secretary saying it's only just beginning, the president argued both can be true, that the military is achieving its objectives while he hopes it's the beginning of building a new Iran. The 7th American service member killed in action in the war with Iran is now home. Vice President J.D. Vance overnight saluting Army Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, who died Sunday from wounds suffered in an Iranian strike on an air base in Saudi Arabia on March 1st. 9 days later, President Trump saying the war may be winding down.
It's going to be ended soon.
Even as he warned of larger strikes if Iran follows through on its escalating threats to cut off oil exports through the critical Strait of Hormuz.
We'll take them out so quickly, they'll never be able to recover, ever.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said today will be the most intense day of strikes and pressed on whether the administration is sending mixed messages on the war's length, saying this.
This is not endless. It's not protracted. We're not allowing mission creep.
The war has choked off traffic through the strait. That, paired with strikes on oil sites across the region, sending gas prices soaring here at home.
To fill it up, it brought an extra $15, $20 on the tank.
President Trump telling NBC News by phone that people have talked about the U.S. seizing Iranian oil, but saying he didn't want to discuss it now. And amid new video of what weapons experts say is a U.S. Tomahawk missile that likely struck an area near an Iranian elementary school at the start of the war, killing 170 people. President Trump again asserting without evidence that Iran could have fired the missile.
The Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries.
Experts say in this conflict, only the U.S. has that munition. The president adding it's under investigation. There are growing concerns now that rising oil prices will increase costs for plane tickets and for goods shipped by truck, like food, clothing, furniture. President Trump adamant the oil industry will be more secure in the long term for now, offering to escort oil tankers and provide risk insurance for companies willing to try. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Happening today at the state capitol, Governor Walz will announce a plan to transform Minnesota's human services. This comes as state officials are feeling federal pressure to address fraud allegations. Audrey Russo's in the newsroom with a closer look.
Yeah, this announcement is about strengthening program integrity within the Department of Human Services. So what does that mean? Well, it appears to be another move by the governor to address the widespread fraud from DHS programs that cost taxpayers millions. Now, what you're looking at here is an announcement from Governor Walz about 2 weeks ago. He was unveiling anti-fraud legislation, and at the time, he proposed increasing penalties for stealing public funds and expanding the ability to audit DHS funds. Now, today's announcement could add on to those ideas. It also comes just one day after state lawmakers heard from a DHS whistleblower who claims she flagged irregular activity back in 2019 and faced retaliation. She actually called for a culture change, starting with mass firings.
I do not see how we can come through this without a massive change at the Department of Human Services in our leadership. There just really simply has to be firings. And I hate to say that. I hate to see people fired.
Now, the governor and DHS commissioner will make their announcement at 11:45. We're going to continue to follow this story throughout the day, both on air and online. Back to you.
Audrey, thank you very much. New this morning, a change to an affordable housing bill in the Senate is proving controversial. The Wall Street Journal reports it restricts large build-to-rent investors. The provision forces them to sell single-family homes within 7 years of construction. The idea here is to help buyers, and the National Association of Realtors supports the plan. Build-to-rent industry groups, however, argue it would have the opposite effect. They say it would choke financing, reduce supply, and drive up prices. Also at the state capitol today, Harvey's Law will move to its first committee hearing. It's named after the 11-month-old killed at a Savage daycare last fall. That law would require cameras in infant and toddler rooms and daycare centers receiving state funding. Parents, caregivers, and healthcare providers and law enforcement are all set to testify here. A Change.org petition of the law now has more than 5,000 signatures. It's been almost a month since the Department of Homeland Security shut down, and travelers are feeling the impact. Airports across the country are reporting hours-long security lines. Right now, TSA agents are working without pay until lawmakers reach a funding agreement for DHS. So over at MSP, on average, it's going to take you about 15 minutes to get through security. Most travelers are heading to their spring break destinations right now, and MSP officials say even during peak travel, wait times there are usually lower than other airports across the country.
I think we've seen a couple 30-minute blips, and then the rest have been below that. So that's really good given the high volume of passengers.
Officials say the last weekend of March will be the busiest this spring break. Early mornings between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. are usually the busiest time of day. This morning, new numbers show just how big the financial shortfall school districts are facing. Of the nearly 50 districts across the metro, the total is pushing $225 million combined. That's according to the head of the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. That group says falling enrollment and the end of pandemic relief funds are still to blame. But unfunded mandates like summer unemployment and paid leave are making it worse. In Stillwater, that district is facing a $5 million deficit and says the paid leave program will cost them upwards of $1 million every year.
We're no longer choosing between a program that maybe isn't as effective and versus a great program. We're choosing between all good programs.
The district is now planning to cut some transportation, administrative, and interventionist positions. Developing out of Minneapolis, the city's police chief facing questions from the community about how his department handled Operation Metro Surge. During yesterday's Police Oversight Commission meeting, members of the public accused MPD of failing to protect residents by not intervening when federal agents used excessive force and prioritizing crowd control over community safety.
Throughout this siege, it was the community that protected our neighbors from the reckless, violent, and untrained federal agents that descended on our city. Minneapolis police were largely nowhere to be found and, in every way, utterly failed in your duty to protect the residents and community.
Police Chief Brian O'Hara said his department prioritized public safety, preserving crime scenes, and avoiding escalating tensions. MPD's policy on immigration states officers will not work with the feds on immigration enforcement, but they're also not able to intervene or obstruct agents from doing their work. This morning, Mayor Jacob Frey is still considering a Minneapolis ordinance to extend pre-eviction notices from 30 to 60 days. The mayor's office released new data showing evictions are down compared to last year. And now several council members are asking the mayor not to veto the measure meant to help renters impacted by Operation Metro Surge.
If Mayor Frey vetoes this policy, he will be responsible for thousands of families getting evicted and becoming unhoused.
Now, the city recently approved $1 million to support families impacted by Operation Metro Surge. However, council members say that money takes time to get to the people, and the eviction pause would help with that. It's been 3 years since Minnesota legalized marijuana, and next month in Forest Lake, the city's first ever cannabis shop is set to open, and the new owner is the mayor. The Greenhouse Cannabis Company is just outside of the downtown area, but its roots to the community run deep. Mayor Blake Roberts comes from generations of small business owners. His family runs the flower shop next to where the new dispensary will be. He says he removed himself from all of the votes to get a license from the city. So far, the reaction is overwhelmingly supportive.
Some of these smoky head shops, that people go into. I don't want my grandma going down to the shop down here. She's 94 and takes gummies for arthritis. Not that I don't trust them, but she's just kind of intimidated by the surroundings. A place like this, much easier for her to walk into and ask questions.
The dispensary is in a completely separate space from the flower shop. This is because only people 21 and older are allowed inside. Mayor Roberts says his experience as a small business owner makes him suited to own a dispensary. Stick with us. More news and weather coming up right after the break.